Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. I'm going to read a poem that I wrote a couple of years ago, I guess. I've been thinking about it in the past week, and I was outside of my city and was thinking when I came home I would try to dig up the poem, find the manuscript of it somewhere and read it. I am sure that I had it posted up at Facebook. I had a lot of poems up at Facebook, and I have left that platform. And it may well also have been up at my website. And my website, I think it was the financial burden of it became too egregious for me, and so I let that lapse as well. And so I was thinking about this poem and realizing that there was no profile for it online at this time, and decided that I would like it to be. So let me just begin by reading it, if I can find it here. Okay, here it is. Whoops. Well, let me see. Sorry. This is titled A Death in Mariupol. Lyudmila, Semernya, 1969 to 2022. She was a teacher. They told the children of those days when missiles fell and rent the town, for they must teach the wicked ways of men so that they might be known. The children practiced at their drills of diving underneath their desks for safety's sake, not theirs the frills of ballet dancers' arabesques. The teachers knew the little school might not withstand the awesome blast if war must come, for war is cruel, nor by their hands the die was cast. We hand in hand shall greet the tanks, Lyudmila said, and side by side none of the teachers shall break ranks. And so she lived, and so she died. The war that had been augured came, for we have nowhere we can run. So she had smiled and did exclaim, she whom the blast did more than stun. The children learned to dive beneath their desks. Away from war they dove, but war has driven them to death, which severs life, but never love. So rest in peace, Lyudmila dear, who loved the children, girls and boys. And some have died, and some are here amidst this veil of tears and noise. So I looked up Lyudmila. I looked in my emails, and fortunately I had sent a copy of the poem to myself, so I did have it. And then when I got the correct spelling of her name, I looked her up online and saw a video about her, and I am sure that the poem I wrote was in response to this video, which I must have seen. And so I will put a link to that video in the description box. The dates for Lyudmila were, she was born in 1967 and she died in 2022. And so she is just a very close contemporary of mine, 5 years younger than I. And if you watch the video, you will see what a charming woman she was and what a devastating loss hers must have been and must indeed continue to be. And so that is the sense in which I would say that I stand with the people of Ukraine. My country, the United States, has, after maintaining a long-term relationship with Ukraine and with the rest of Europe, has betrayed both of those allies and switched sides and now joined the side of Russia against Ukraine and against the Ukrainian people, as well as Europe. And this, of course, distresses me. There is little that I can do besides, in a public way such as this, express my support for these people. I believe many Ukrainians continue to be friends of many Americans, and it is an unfortunate situation that my country, and I have to also stipulate that it is not a government betraying allies totally against the will of the public or the voting populace, at least. The electorate largely supports this kind of betrayal. I think I put up a poem somewhere in which I noted that in Dante's comedy, those who betray reside in the lowest rung of hell. And certainly, if such a schema applies to an afterlife, if there be an afterlife, that is where many of my compeers, many of my co-nationalists belong, to be sure, with Judas Iscariot and so forth. I think on the news today, it was mentioned that Warren Buffett's son gave a huge sum of money to Ukraine, and I am sure others have done. I don't know as yet if, as has happened in other conflicts in the past, men are taking up arms on behalf of Ukraine from my country. I would suppose some have done. I don't know. The betrayal has included not just cutting off aid, but also cutting off information and also refusing to allow other allies in Europe to share information, intelligence information with Ukraine. So it has led to a huge spurt in deaths. And of course, Putin has no peace-driven objective. But that's, again, not my topic to talk about particularly. But I think that this turn my country has taken is an unfortunate one, to be sure. I've talked about how years ago I lived for a span in Taiwan, Taipei, and for a while I tried to make a little income. I had to support myself in some kind of way, and I tried teaching English as a second language. I never did particularly well. I am not a teacher. I'm not inclined to teach. I'm not very good at it, to be sure. And so at some point I got a job instead, and it was a full-time job for a trading company. So instead of what I would have made a few nights a week or a couple of nights for an hour here or there in terms of salary, I wound up earning by working full-time at a trading company. And I'm not particularly suited to business either, but I am so much less suited to teaching. However, my boss, who ran this trading company, it was a set of three brothers who actually ran the place. He would occasionally opine about his philosophy of doing business. And one of the tenets of that was having friendly relations with his trading partners or his business partners. And his objective was never to make a killing. He only made very small, minuscule profits from any single transaction. But his objective was to develop friendships, business friendships, and long-term relationships with his customers. And I realized that that is completely the opposite to the philosophy by which my country presently is driven. Our grifter-in-chief, Donald Trump, believes that a business deal has to be a zero-sum game, as opposed to both sides to a transaction being able to win or gain. One side must win and the other side must lose, and the more one side loses, the better it is. His view, of course, is not for extended relationships. His view is for one-off deals. And so the foreign policy in terms of business of my country has devolved into that type of relationship. Anger among our Canadian brethren to the north has reared its head, very reasonably reared its head, and Canadians are simply refusing to purchase certain items, tariff or no tariff. Why should they? And it is impossible to see such a stance as being unjust. So those who care for fairness and that sort of thing must support them in, say, any boycotts. And we're not even talking about organized boycotts. We're just talking about individual consumers refusing to buy an item just because of the inherent repugnance. And I think in the first Trump administration, American brands suffered greatly, and I am sure that they will be suffering greatly again. And in this case, I don't think that they will recover. As I commented on a video today, why should one go and get a coffee at Starbucks when you can get a Lavazza coffee at Paris Baguette? Lavazza is an Italian company and Paris Baguette is a Korean company. I'm not saying that these respective companies are run by angelic souls, but just given the choice, why on earth would one frequent or support a Starbucks when you have other options and indeed better options out there? And of course, much the same applies to our brethren to the south, our Mexican neighbors and friends. So the present administration has ruptured the good relationships my country had with all of its previous allies. And it is just a strange philosophy to think that one is better being isolated with no friends when having friends can be of immense help throughout the course of life, either for an individual or for a nation. One may easily contrast the Trump policy with the long-standing policy of China, which has gone out of its way to adopt friendly and even non-threatening relationships with its peers and with smaller countries around the globe. I'm not saying, again, that China is not capable of bullying tactics, for example, but it seems that bullying tactics are the linchpin of Western commerce, particularly as epitomized in the present regime here in the United States. Again, as a writer of poetry, primarily, I don't care about business. It's the last thing on my mind, and I don't particularly care about politics. But I think the notion of having friends is important, and therefore, as an individual, even though it goes against my country's public stance, public assertions, I feel that it is right to announce my friendship with the people of Ukraine. So that is a story about that little poem. As I say, I will put a link to the video of Lyudmila in the description box. Now, she was a teacher, and I am no good at being a teacher, but I respect and esteem those who devote themselves to that activity more than anybody else, just about. I remember my boss telling me that in China, the hierarchy that the ancient Chinese used to use to classify the different professions was opposite to what we use. So we, and particularly the sort that supports Donald Trump, we view businessmen as at the highest level, at the pinnacle of possible occupations, and teachers at the lowest. But that really, in traditional Chinese theory, that should be flipped around. And I don't remember the exact order, but farmers also should be high up there. Now, in the U.S., we have corrupted the notion of farmer so much that agribusiness is valued, whereas farming itself is not. And we, of course, also have seen ample evidence of that coming from the present administration. So my country's priorities are all askew, and there is very little that an independent individual such as myself can do to alter or change or impact that. But I can, as I say, publicly assert that I do stand with the people of Ukraine. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.